Welcome back. I spoke about this at the top of the show. Britain facing an unprecedented illegal immigration crisis. A record 430 people crossing the English Channel on Monday alone. Now, understandably, growing calls to bring in the military as the French government proves to be little help despite all those millions of pounds paid to them this week in fixing the people smuggling problem. For their reaction, I'm joined by my stellar international panel, co-host of Outsiders, James Morrow, and host of Bernardi, Corey Bernardi. Corey, why on earth is Boris Johnson failing to learn the lessons that we had here in relation to illegal incursions?
It's a great question, Peter. Those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. The UK has spent something like £45 million paying the French to not police international waters. The solution here is for them to get into the bailiwick of Guernsey, commandeer one of the smaller islands like Sark, annex it, as an offshore territory, and anyone they grab, they should just put there and place them in limbo. That's what I would be doing.
Hey, I tell you what, that's a very good idea. You might get yourself a call from Downing Street with an idea like that. I don't understand, James. I mean, that red wall of Tory voters that Boris Johnson picked up in that seismic election win, this is the sort of stuff they want to see. They want to see Britain protecting its borders. They want to see Britain come out of Brexit as a success and return to some sort of self-respect. They're not going to thank Boris Johnson for sitting on his hands.
Well, that's exactly right, Peter. I mean, the people who voted for Brexit are not going to vote for illegal immigration. It's just simply not going to happen. And I feel sometimes that we wake up in the morning and we don't know every day which Boris we're going to get. Are we going to get the good Boris of opening up Britain, or are we going to get the bad Boris of, climate change and this sort of thing with illegal immigration? The solution is, as Corey says, either put them on an island like Sark or something like that, or, as you said at the top of the show, put them in boats, turn them around, send them back to France. Either way, the message has to be the same in England as it was here in Australia. If you arrive illegally by boat, you will not be settled here. It's very simple. And that is what the voters want to hear. And that is ultimately the kindest thing to do, because you cannot have people setting out to make these voyages in unsafe craft and so on, because we've seen what a disaster that is here.
A disaster, and it goes against the UN Convention, and it goes to all those things I went through at the top of the show. Let's stay in the UK. Government inspectors, Corey Bernardi, have found a book calling for gay people to be executed in the library of an Islamic school in West Yorkshire. Now, the book's called Islam on Homosexuality, and if what's in it, as reported, is true, it's vile. Now, one thing for a faith-based school to teach their religion, and I'm fine with that, but calling for executions, can't tolerate that.
No, it's absolutely wrong, and this there's no doubt in my mind that this was in the book, in the library. It was stamped as a library book, and this is the perils of fundamentalism. I mean, there are many moderate Muslims in the world who practice their faith, believe in a broader God, but Islamic fundamentalism literally interprets Quranic texts and the life and times of Muhammad as the way to live today, and that's what we see with groups like ISIS that are so oppressive towards individuals, that were throwing homosexuals off of high buildings and preaching intolerance, extraordinary intolerance. So there is no place for that in a modern civilised world. I think most people understand it, and it beggars belief that a religious school of any denomination anywhere in the world has that sort of poison in their library for children to read. Not in the Western world anyway, maybe in some basket case, tin pot Middle Eastern dictatorship, but not here.
Spot on, spot on. We'll stay in the UK, James. Britain's schools minister has launched a stunning defence of Western literature, saying that the works of dead white men should be taught with pride. Now, here's the quote. Nick Gibbs, the minister's name, he says, "We'll not create a more harmonious, tolerant and equal society through promoting a curriculum based on relevance to or representativeness of one group, nor will we do so by being ashamed of who we are and where we came from." Tell you what, I'm a bit keen for this education minister to come down here and take on a portfolio in Australia. We could do with a bit of that curriculum spine.
I was just thinking the exact same thing. And I mean, I know Alan Tudge here has fired up a bit about the curriculum here, but boy, I would love to see that kind of clarity here, not just on a federal level, but on a state level for people like Sarah Mitchell in New South Wales. You know, he is exactly right, and I don't almost know what you can add to that except to say that this leftist idea that people can only relate to works by people of their own skin color is so divisive, it is so dangerous, and every society that balkanizes, falls apart, and sets itself against one another always winds up with this sort of thing that seems like a great idea. Oh, let's teach people about their own thing, but it winds up dividing everything. This heritage, this dead white male heritage, it's everybody's heritage. It's not the heritage of white people. It's the heritage of everybody in the West, and it doesn't matter what colour you are, and good on the UK Education Minister.
Yeah, spot on. As I said, I want him to come down to Australia. Federal Environment Minister Susan Lee, she might have had a win on the Great Barrier Reef. Corey, we talked about this. This is the Chinese-chaired World Heritage Committee meeting to downgrade Australia, the reef's status. It looks like she'll get through.
Oh, I hope so, because this is clearly a bit of nasty payback by the Chinese, and they're having a vote on it tomorrow. So if we can win this, it is actually a win for sovereignty. It's a win for common sense, because the Great Barrier Reef has not been imperilled. We've all spoken to people like Peter Ridd and others who are experts in this space. They recognise the coral is growing. We had to truck in a whole bunch of these delegates to take them on a snorkelling trip, but I hope it has convinced them, because if they sort of go down the path of the Great Barrier Reef is dying and really threatened, it has huge implications for our fishing industry, our shipping industry, a whole range of things, particularly in the Queensland area. So I hope they have a massive win on this, Susan Lee.
Yeah, spot on. Look, the posse of woke councils in Melbourne, Moreland Council, Yarra, Darebin, they've signed up to this non-proliferation treaty against fossil fuels. I mean, James, honestly, they just need to get the bins collected, fix the potholes. They are not foreign ministers. They're not the federal government. People have had enough.
Look, this is something that has been going on for as long as I've been in Australia, and probably a lot longer before that, because, you know, there are still signs you can find in the inner west of Sydney where you can find this is a nuclear-free zone, as if, you know, the radiation, the fallout of the nuclear blasts from the Cold War were going to stop there at that side of Parramatta Road. Councillors, as you say, need to stick to rates, roads, rubbish. They do not need to have all of this sort of thing. The anti-fossil fuels, they don't have an energy policy. They're a council. They don't need to have a foreign policy on Israel like Marrickville Council did, about 10 years ago. They're a council, and they don't need to be doing this sort of thing. It is an abuse of ratepayers' money by people who are on council, but they think they're too good to be on council.
Corey, I don't know about you, but I'm getting emails now from people inside the bureaucracy, state and federal, where people have their preferred pronouns down the bottom, where they put the mobile phone, the signature block. My preferred pronouns are whatever they are. And I picked up a story in New York. They now have fines $250,000 if you fail to use someone's preferred pronouns. That is nuts.
It is nuts, Peter, and particularly because, of course, you can change your gender identity at the drop of a hat. So you might be a Mr. and a Mrs. or a Mr. and a whatever today, and tomorrow you might want to be a Ms. or a cat or some other crazy thing. So $250,000, it's nuts.
Crazy. Gentlemen, thank you for your time. See you next Thursday. Corey Bernardi, James Morrow.
Thanks, Peter.
Right, now, before we go...
Peter.